China suspended more than 1,000 social media accounts critical of the government's policies on the country's current COVID-19 outbreak. The site said it addressed 12,854 violations, including attacks on medical experts and workers. According to reports, China has used mass quarantines and testing, among other restrictions. Now, since the COVID-19 pandemic began in 2020, but most of its pandemic restrictions ended last month, leading to a rise in cases in the country that has strained its medical sources. That's the latest that we are gathering in. I still have the panel of guests with me. All right, I would like to take my first question to Ambassador Suresh Kumar Goyal. Now, sir, China is now suspending has suspended over 1,000 social media accounts who are critical of government policies. Now, we already know in past that China has been trying to hide the actual number, COVID situation about their medical resources, wherein also now Xi also praised their COVID techniques, the way they handled COVID, and said that there is a path ahead and they have to conquer it. Now China is suspending more than 1,000 media accounts that are critical of the government policies. So this timeline is very, how do we explain it to our viewers? But this timeline is very ironical. Like, first we see that there is a situation that there is lack of information on the Chinese COVID situation. Then Xi praising the policies, wherein we know that the China is in economic crisis. We know that China has strained medical resources, and now China has suspended over 1,000 media accounts who are critical of the government policies. How do you react?
Tisha, thank you very much. Again, the latest development is of some concern because those who track Chinese social accounts, and there is a good number of people within India and other countries outside China, USA, all over, they track Chinese social accounts because, you see, it's rather a funny thing that while China does try to control the flow of information from China to the outside world for the simple reason that the survival of the dictatorial government or the communist government depends upon the information dissemination and how information goes out of China. You'll be surprised to know that actually in the past, they had allowed the social media accounts to disseminate information, to post, and most of the information that we were getting on the COVID situation in China was coming from the social media accounts. Now, during the time when there was zero COVID in place, clearly things seemed quite nice and everything, that not so much a spread of COVID. In fact, China was claiming all the time that they have been able to successfully deal with the COVID, while the Western countries are still struggling with it. And that became the scoring point for a long time during the pandemic times. Now that they are closing down, these 1,000 accounts are over, shows very, very definitely their concern about the situation in China. If they are closing down these accounts and they're trying to control the information, there is a clear fear in the Chinese government's mind that these accounts would actually let the real situation in China out, which could be very, very critical. Therefore, I have two things to say about this closing of the accounts. Number one, that it demonstrates the situation in China to be actually worse than what the government of China is officially trying to project. Number one. Number two, that Chinese government could resort to more dictatorial means in future also to control the information flow, particularly on pandemic and on the economic situation. So we should look ahead for actually more worse news from China. Fiza.
Definitely, Ambassador Goyal, points noted. Now I would like to ask I would go to Sanjeev Srivastav. Sir, now China has taken a drastic step after praising the policies, Xi praising the policies, saying great policies but way ahead, to tackle COVID situation in China, and now has suspended more than 1,000 media accounts critical of the government policy. Sir, how do you see this development, the significance of this development that's coming in from China?
Well, in my assessment, Xi Jinping is managing this public anger against his so-called zero COVID policy, which he was pursuing. And obviously, because of the massive pressure which came on him from the people of China, those who came down on the streets, they protested, they raised their voices, and then because of such pressures, he had to, do away with this so-called zero COVID policy. But now, I think this step was taken by Xi Jinping just to manage the anger of the masses of China. Now, since the situation is somewhat relaxed for the people of China, they can move around, they can do something. Again, they are trying to manage things by not letting the real picture, real information about the pathetic situation of China with regard to COVID in public domain. And that is why, again, they have started to crack down on certain, social media sites wherever the people are sharing their informations. So I think this kind of measures are being taken just to manage the situation by the Chinese government. And I think Xi Jinping is under tremendous pressure. He knows the significance of the voices of the people, and I think he has realized this when he relaxed this so-called zero COVID policy, the kind of barbaric pursuit he was doing of this policy. So in that regard, I think they are trying to do some management, but also it clearly indicates that the situation, real situation of this COVID pandemic infections could be far worse than it is coming out in media. And obviously China is trying to, just cover it up through this kind of restrictions, this kind of banning of various sites and various social media accounts, etc. But in my assessment, they are trying their best to hide this information yet again, for which China is infamous for. China has done a criminal act in the past by hiding information regarding to corona pandemic, and because of this, entire international community suffered. Not only people of China suffered, but the entire international community has suffered because of this kind of irresponsible and reckless behavior which has been shown by the Chinese authorities. Had they shared this information in time to the international community, to WHO, I think we would have been in a far better situation. If you, just like to mention here, that if you look at the WHO's response in 2002 SARS pandemic and 2019 corona pandemic, there's a huge difference, because that time WHO got information in time. But here, in this case, in the corona virus, China released this information after 2 months. But according to international health regulation, it was supposed to do within 24 hours. So I think China has done this kind of a criminal acts in the past also. They are doing it again. They are hiding in part.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.